All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to The Backstage, a project of resilientchurchleadership.com. My name is Eddie Copeland. I'm coming at you from South Florida. When I'm not leading this conversation, I actually serve as the executive director of Church United, a gospel study movement here in our region that is integrated with the National Christian Foundation of South Florida. But if you are just joining us for the first time and wondering, what in the world have I stumbled into here? Let me just rest assured that this is not another leadership webinar or podcast. This is not a place where you're going to come away with 3 things that you need to go and do or try harder on. This is a place where week in, week out here at the Backstage, where we just open up a conversation around soul care and character and investing underneath the waterline alongside fellow pastors and ministry leaders. And that's what Resilient Church Leadership is all about. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about the role of coaching in a pastor's and ministries leader's life. And in previous episodes, you've heard us talk a lot about coaching. We've talked about how vital the role of coaching is in resiliency, in leadership. And today, you're actually going to hear from 2 of, I'll call them the fathering figures, but 2 of the key figures that have really led the way on gospel coaching and pastoral coaching. I'm thrilled to have 2 dear friends with me. First, Dr. Tom Wood. Dr. Tom Wood was the founding director of the Metro Atlanta Collective, and prior to his role starting Church Multiplication Ministries, he served as the director of church planting for a church planting network called PMI in Atlanta, and he has planted and pastored 2 churches. He's earned his doctorate degree from Reformed Theological Seminary in Orlando, and is the author of Gospeling Life Together, the Church Planter Field Manual, a 4-book series on church planting, and co-author of The Gospel Coach. Tom has been married to his wife, Rachel, for 40 years. They have 3 daughters, 2 son-in-laws, 4 grandkids, and the list could go on and on. Here's what you need to know. Tom's a dear friend, an awesome guy, and has so much wisdom in the role of counseling. To my right, at least, we also have Jimmy Dodd. Jimmy Dodd is the president and founder of Pastor Serve. He's a regular here on our Resilient Church Leadership team and on this Backstage webinar. So, brothers, welcome. So looking forward to today's conversation.
Hey. Thank you, man. Tom gets the big bio, and I get essentially nothing, but I'm okay with that.
So there's Dr. Tom Wood, and then there's Jimmy.
Yeah, and you know what I'd like to say, that I don't feel like we're both. I don't feel like I should be called actually a father. I feel like Tom is the father, and I'm one of his sons. But I feel uncomfortable saying here's 2 of the fathers, because I think that Tom is actually the father.
Sure,
and I don't know. I'm like I don't know. I feel like a nephew at times. Let's just say that.
That's fair. And I know Tom has less hair, but you also have a lot of gray too. So I mean, I don't know what to say. No.
And then there's Cousin Eddie.
And then there's Cousin Eddie. So Cousin Eddie doesn't even know why he's part of the family sometimes. But no, guys, seriously. Eddie. Thank you for making this time. Really looking forward to today's conversation. And let's just jump right in. Tom, I'm going to start with you. We hear a lot about coaching in today's, not just today's Christian environment, but today's cultural environment. There is life coaching, there's career coaching. Talked to a lot of people that have a coach for many different facets and elements of their life, but you've actually pioneered a whole coaching methodology called gospel coaching, and you've given a significant part of your life and career to this world of coaching. And I would just love to start with, why did you get into coaching, and why specifically did you land on a methodology called gospel coaching?
Great. Hey, first, I know this is like, I don't mean this perfunctorily. I really mean this sincerely. Eddie, thanks for inviting me to the show, and very appreciative about what you're doing in resilient ministry, and really some of the things you're doing in South Florida is just incredible. I've already asked you to teach me some things that you're already pioneering down there. So I look forward to hearing more about that. And then Jimmy, we've been friends for a long time, and Pastor Serve was born out of necessity, and right, that's the mother of all invention. And so some of your own life necessity or experience really born that ministry, and it's been an incredible ministry. We make referral to people all the time about to you guys, and vice versa. So anyway, it's good to see you, and glad to be part of your show. Yeah. So a little bit about why did we get into the coaching thing? So it really comes out of my own journey. I came to this job. I came to a job in Atlanta to recruit planters and to place them and to assess them and to support them while they were on the field. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is find out, how do you coach a planter? I planted 2 churches. Nobody had ever coached me. And so this is a long time ago, back in 2000. So it's been 20 years ago. And there really wasn't a lot in the coaching field at that time. There were a few guys that were out there, some of the pioneers of Christian coaching. So I did several things. I went to several of the training events that people were doing about coaching. And for me, none of it ever synced up with my own, I guess, bent towards an understanding of the human heart, understanding of how the gospel works in a human heart. It just didn't seem to line up with what they were teaching me, didn't line up with what I fundamentally believed. And so that's why I went on to study in my doctorate about this whole area of how you coach people using the gospel, or not in using it, because you don't use the gospel, but how does the gospel inform the way that we coach people? So yeah, that's how I was born.
That's good. That's good. So like, how does gospel coaching differ from other coaching frameworks and methodologies, and really, like, why does every pastor need a coach? I know, Jimmy, you're involved with that a lot, but Tom, just since you're on a roll here, real quick, like, how is this gospel coaching different than just other coaching?
Yeah. So the thing that I heard, the common theme that I heard when I started listening to everybody else teaching about coaching, and again, I knew nothing about coaching. I'd never been coached as a pastor or as a planter. So the common thread of everybody's teaching primarily was, even though they had a different delivery system, but the common thread was coaches only ask questions, they never tell. That was the thing. And so you had to learn how to ask questions. And I think you should learn how to ask questions. We haven't been taught well how to ask good questions or everything like that. But underneath that was this theological belief about the human heart. And that was the problems that people had existed somewhere out there. And the solution to their problem was in and of themselves. And so you as a coach needed to mirror back to them, to ask them enough questions where they could have this, I've found the answer inside myself to this problem that's sitting out there. And that just is not, to me, is not what the Bible teaches about the human heart. The Bible, as I understand the Bible, it teaches us that we lie to ourselves constantly. We deceive ourselves.
Yeah.
We set up for ourselves fake solutions, fake, they call it, we call them idols in some places, heroes, false saviors. And we pursue those things, and we have blind sides. We have a dark side to us that we can't see. And that Josh Garrell's a singer-songwriter. He's got this great line. He says, there's a way that seems right to a man till he's in over his head and he'd understand why the plans he made only led him astray. And a lot of men and women get there and they can't understand why. And so a gospel coach comes along and says, there's a gospel response to that. There's a Jesus response to that. And the gospel says that the problem is not out there and the solution inside of you. The problem is inside of you, and the solution to your problem is outside of you in the person and the work of Jesus.
That's really good. Such an important difference. Jimmy, you do a lot in pastoral coaching in your pastor serve world. Heard you multiple times publicly tell every pastor you need a coach.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Let me just say that what you just heard from Tom is true. And you know what, I can think of the time that I was preaching, and it was a long time ago. Gosh, it might have been like 26 years ago. It might have been 24 years ago. It was a long time ago. And I preached a
father figure.
I preached a killer message on Nehemiah, and Tom was there. And afterwards, he was very kind and very, very gentle. And he said, man, that was a really strong message on Nehemiah, and you just had some great points, da, 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 da. However, you didn't preach Jesus. You didn't preach Jesus. You preached a great thing on leadership, and it was really good but you didn't preach Jesus. And that just struck me. And I said, okay, help me understand how you would have preached Jesus in that passage. And he gave me wisdom in that. And I'm telling you, that was a life-changing moment for me. It was a deeply, deeply life-changing moment of, that it's possible to preach a message, and it could be a great message, but it would be a great message at the Jewish synagogue. It would be a great message at the Kiwanis Club. But if I don't preach Jesus, I haven't preached the gospel. And I'm telling you, that's so much my life now. And I talk about that constantly. But
That's
Tom
really
was
good.
the first person ever that just said, hey, listen, this is about Jesus. This is about Jesus. And if we're not talking about Jesus, it's just a waste of time. And it was like, that was a life-changing moment. So when he says it's very much about the gospel, it's about the fact that, that we have to be fixed and we just can't fix ourselves. Man, he's been preaching that for a long time, and he helped me understand that. So that's why I say that he's a father figure, because he helped me make a big, big, big step in life.
That's so good.
So after all of that, it's so important to be coached, because coaching is not just about being overly productive. It's not just about, gosh, our church grew bigger and our staff was stronger and we have all of these things in place, and now I was coached and boom, we have an org chart now and we have a staff, all on and on and on. Coaching is about the soul. Coaching is in so many ways about the soul. And and it's just extremely important that you have a coach that's not just about productivity, but is also about soul care. I think it's both, but you've got to talk about your soul, because if you don't, you're going to miss the basis of coaching. And I think that we talk about coaching oftentimes in a way that I'm thinking we make it sound all about, hey, we just have to just improve the things that we do. And it's no, we need to dig into who we are and take a deep, deep, deep dive in our soul. And it's hard a lot of times, but that's what makes, I think, gospel coaching very, very different from all other types of coaching, because it really, really is about the soul.
Yeah, Eddie. So that's exactly, what we say and what we believe is in gospel coaching is that every issue that comes to the table in a coaching conversation has a heart component related to it. You said soul. You mean the inner part of the motivational structure of the heart, right? The thing that's driving somebody. Every issue, whether it's how am I going to sort through all this chaos of COVID in my church? What am I going to do? Are people even going to come back? Those are all great questions, and we need to have strategic thinking about what are we going to do and how are we going to re-engage community and everything. But all of those questions still have a motivational heart issue that's related to it. And if we as coaches don't deal with the driving motivational structures of the human heart and apply Jesus to that, we could be helping somebody achieve their own idolatry.
That's very powerful, and that's really true, man. Jimmy, you've gone so far to say in one of your books that coaching is actually one of the 6 key roles a pastor needs in their life. We talk about boss, trainer, friend, mentor, but you throw coach and counselor.
That was almost there. If you would have said all 6, I have a gift card for you. But
it was so close. It was off memory. Leave me alone.
So close.
But like I'm curious though, like, you place such a value on that, and how is a coach from your framework, and Tom, I'd love to have you chime in on this too, but how is a coach from your framework different than, say, a counselor, a trainer, a spiritual director? Like, what is that niched role of coach for you?
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think that I can speak in broad terms, but like, I think you also have got to understand it's not just a clear line, because I think there's times in which coaching does become counseling. There's times in which it can kind of become consult. It's one of those things. I think it can shift around a little bit, but in a broad sense, to coach, you're going to talk about things right now and also the future. Whereas more and more, I think when you start to talk about things as far as counseling, it's more present and then things in the past. So I think there are times in coaching where it's okay. We start to look down at your heart and we start to look like at your motivations. And there might be some things actually in the past. It might be, well, I didn't feel accepted at this point in life, and I want to feel accepted. So I want to have a large church because I want my dad to say that, like, he's proud of me. I think that I think there can be counseling things, but in a broad sense, I mean, like you counsel, and I think that oftentimes you start to look back at those things that have started to lead to where we are now, and you coach, and it's oftentimes here and then stuff in the future. But like oftentimes you might have a problem, and the presenting problem is not the real problem. So you start to peel back those layers, and you start to see, okay, there's actually a foundational issue, and it's actually back in the past. So we are going to have to counsel just a bit here. So I think that those hats are switched oftentimes in coaching.
That's really good.
So it's just not as easy, but I think that it's very, very wise to have a coach and a counselor. But you just have to know that I think oftentimes a counselor is pretty much a counselor, but a coach can wear, I think, a lot of hats where he can at times actually become a counselor.
Tom, what would your perspective on that be? The role of coach versus the role of counselor and other kind of niche roles that we have in our lives as leaders?
Yeah, I think that anybody that's doing any kind of gospel ministry, whether you're a pastor and you're counseling somebody, or you're a therapist and you're a Christian therapist, or a mentor or a teacher, I mean, if you're involved in gospel ministry, you got to deal with somebody's heart. What I think is that counseling primarily focuses on getting somebody who's unhealthy, some issue in their past, family of origin issue, whatever, from unhealth to health. That's the job of a counselor, to get them to health. Yeah. A coach is somebody who's typically deal with somebody who's healthy, and they're helping them in a particular role. So if you're a pastor of a church, I'm helping you with leadership or preaching, or the various roles of what it means to be a pastoral leader in a congregation. Or if you're a planter, then we're dealing with church planting, specifics. Oftentimes in coaching, one of the ministry objectives that a person comes to is that they're going to go get a counselor because they've got to deal with those family of origin issues. Yeah. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time in a coaching thing trying to counsel somebody. I would apply Jesus to that situation. But if it was severe enough to where they needed to get to health, then we would encourage them to go see a counselor. But yeah.
It's good. And the next time I answer that question, I'm going to say exactly what Tom just said, just so you know.
That's because he's the real father figure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
there's good. A theme here.
That's good. Tom, you've written extensively on coaching. You've written extensively on the impact coaching can make. Talk about your perspective of coaching in resiliency. Like, how does coaching lead to resiliency in leadership and in ministry from your perspective?
Well, here's the thing again, and we keep coming back to the gospel coaching. I hope we can define what the gospel is for people, but this is true across the board for many churches and leaders today. The gospel not only has power to transform a life, it is the power to transform a life. And we've got to allow it to do its work in our lives. And so having somebody come alongside who understands the vital grace renewal dynamics in the human heart, how does that work in leadership? How does that work in the functioning? I mean, that's just gold. I mean, you have somebody who's listening on the outside, who's observing the blind spots, who can ask the right questions and also give you keen insights into the motivations of why you're doing, and pray with you. And I mean, that's just gold. It's just gold.
That's good. I want to park a little bit of time, actually a fair amount of time, on this next question. It's something I've heard a lot. I know both of you have heard this a lot, is when you talk about getting a coach, or when you're trying to pitch coaching to pastors, you can talk all day long about the benefits that it's had on you personally, about, the results that it's had. But a lot of the times there's a lot of hindrances for a pastor to actually pick up the phone or shoot an email to say, I'm interested in coaching. What are the common themes of barriers that you both have seen?
Well, I know that we both agree on probably what the heart issue of what it is, because we both share a common theology of the human heart, and we've known each other a long time. So I kind of know where Jimmy's going to come from. But go ahead, Jimmy. You put it out there. The ball's teed up on the.
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like if I swing and miss now, it'll be hugely embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, like it's pride, and fear. I mean, it's just pride and fear. It's okay. If I need a coach, I'm basically saying I don't know everything. I'm saying that I need some help. I'm saying that there might be some things in my heart and my life and my ministry and my marriage and everything else that aren't exactly right. And you know what? It's humbling. It's humbling to say, I need a coach. And you know what? Let me just say, because I'm emailed after these all the time, and I'm always asked this question. Okay, you talk about boss, trainer, coach, counselor, mentor, friend. Do you have a boss, trainer, coach, counselor? Yes, I have a coach that I meet with twice a month. He's my coach. I am coached, and it is immensely helpful. I have a counselor who's actually right over here across the hall from me, who I go to, who is immensely helpful. I have mentors in my life. So I have those roles in my life. But, listen, you know what? It's a bit humbling because it means, listen, I need some help. I don't have this all right. And there is so much pride in people of, well, that our church is large enough, and I don't know if I would want to be coached by anybody that hasn't had a church this large. And, I pastor a church, and it might be a huge mega. You might have the giant church. I'm in a church of 20,000, and there's really no peers out there. That is the weakest excuse. That's pride and arrogance. That means that you can't learn from anybody. Thank God that Michael Jordan that he didn't have that mindset. Just like that mindset with like a Dean Smith, who was not a great basketball player. He played at KU. God bless Kansas University. If you can see these sign balls above, those are all Kansas. But anyway, he was not a great player at Kansas. He sat the bench. He was not a great player, but he was a great mind, and he absorbed it. Listen, there are some great coaches out there that have not pastored huge churches, but they're wonderful coaches, and they can dive deep with you. You just have to let go of the pride and the arrogance and the fear of, I might not know all of these things, because you can be helped immensely in coaching, but it goes down to those heart issues so often of pride. It's just, I don't want to say that I need help because it's hard. Tom,
yeah,
I'm sure that you can add to that.
Yeah, hearty amen. I'd add to it, and I think that for some guys, they are they just don't know where to go to get a coach. That may be part of it. They're willing. Some guys are just apathetic to it. Like whatever. I've got my church. It may not be 20,000. I got my 100. I got my 120. What do I need a coach for? I don't want to. Right. I don't need to upset anything. Everything's working. And other guys, just like you just said, I mean, it's just part of that denial thing. And I think it's for, the fear factor and the pride factor that you were just saying is certainly a driving force. And underneath that is potentially, the fear of my idol of approval being exposed, that I don't have the approval of other people. The guy that's apathetic has probably got a comfort idol. I'm fine. Everything's good. I don't need to upset anything. My kids are in Christian school. I got a nice house, the manse or whatever. My wife's got a job. She's happy. I sure as heck don't need to upset anything by having some coach, sneaking around my business, So and it could be just the security of the insecurity, I guess, of being exposed to maybe not being the answer man. And
what
that fear. So.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Let me just say that, one thing I think that's also a big hindrance is that we just aren't actually honest as we are coached. So years and years ago, when I had some small kids, I was very kind to my wife, and I thought, you know what, let's get somebody to come in maybe once a month and just clean our house. It was the biggest waste of money in the world, because my wife I've got to clean the house because the person is going to come that's going to clean our house. And so I've got to make sure that we clean everything. It's like, no. That's why that person is going to come. They're going to come and help us. And it was the biggest waste of money. It's like, okay, let's just stop this because you think we have, listen, that happens all the time in coaching. It's like I start to coach somebody and it's a huge step for them. They're being very, very humble. but then they are trying so hard to basically impress me that I don't have a lot of issues, and they're not honest. You've got to be honest in your coaching and say, yeah, you know what, I've got some things that are a mess in my life. I've got some things in my heart that are a mess. I've got all sorts of idols and I need some help. But don't think, okay, I want to take that big step and I want to be coached. And then you do everything you can to try to just like impress your coach. That's the biggest waste. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your money.
So,
if you're going to come there and just say, I got to just impress this person.
Jimmy, I want you to actually take us into that moment, because I think that's spot on. And you just saved me like $130 a month, because I was about to hire a house cleaner for my wife who has small kids at home.
Yourself,
and now I get to say, babe, listen, Jimmy said not to. He said it's a waste of money. I was going to love you, but my coach said no. Listen.
But Eddie, I've been to your house. It's a mess. You need a house cleaner.
Yeah, it's good.
in love is your friend. I'm saying that. And if you don't admit that, it's a heart issue, Eddie, but go ahead.
Oh, no. Friends, my house is a mess. I have 4 small kids and 1 on the way. And it is a circus at my house. But Jimmy, in those moments where you've just started a coaching relationship with somebody and you're sensing, okay, like you're painting this rosy picture of your life is perfect, your ministry is perfect, everything's up and to the right. Enter into what you say in that moment to bring some gospel clarity or to bring some insight. Like, how do you react in that moment? I know, Tom,
that's a great question. I mean, like, it's one of those things. Oftentimes, it's, hey, listen, you know what? I don't think that I don't think that you have this big issue. And like, I don't. I think you do have a big issue. I think I also have a big issue, which means I believe with my whole heart that I need to have God's grace just as much as you do. And I know that you will tend to hold back a little bit at the start because you're going to kind of try to just sense if I'm going to walk with you in this. And so you might share some small issues, but you're just kind of in a sense, just kind of testing me. So just know this, that I probably will just assume that if you shared that there's this small problem, I'm gonna just assume it's actually this big. And you know what? There is still grace for that. There is still grace. Good. No matter how giant the problem, there is still God's grace. So you know what? Listen, I will walk with you. So please don't waste my time or your time and just kind of, just in small increments, you're going to share more and more. Listen, I know you're broken. It's not going to be a big shock to me because we're all broken. We all need Jesus. We all need grace every moment of every day. So let's just understand that at the start, and let's just jump in. And most of the time, it's like it's just strange. Oftentimes, it's all right. I've never heard that in my life before, and if you're being honest, this probably is a safe place. And let's just dive in, and then it's just
there it goes.
Everything.
Yeah. Plus, you talked to the guy's wife beforehand, right?
Yeah, and it's
that's
a mess.
Joke. That's a joke. Yeah.
Or her husband. We coach a lot of female pastors as well, because we have lots of females on staff. We have on the staff of Pastor Serve. I think we've got 13 females now. So we there's lots and lots of female pastors that we coach. So it's not just males, it's females. So there's lots of pastors' husbands.
Yes, very true. Very true. Good catch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, take us into that moment too, when you feel that a planter or a pastor or a ministry leader, they're paying for this session, they've got some skin in the game, they're donating some good time of their work week to be coached, and you're getting a sense that, listen, you're just not being honest, you're not being authentic with me, you're painting a rosy picture. What's your paradigm look like?
You mean other than just firing them as a client?
Yeah.
Well, we spend a lot of time. I think that it's important for us as coaches to understand somebody's backstory. So you have the story arc, and so up front we try to spend a lot of time understanding, how did God make them? What were they passionate about? When did they first realize, hey, you're good at this. This is something you should do. They sense that they had the Imago Dei in their life. And then at some point in their life, the ruin came upon them. Genesis 3, part of that backstory hit them where they were ruined and their life became a mess, and by their own choices or by the sins of other people upon them, whatever, it could be something in their backstory. So once we spend a lot of time trying to understand what that is in somebody's life as we are coaching them. I mean, it's part of our paradigm. So if I'm down the path with somebody that I feel like they're blowing smoke up my skirt, or they're, trying to pass on something, I could go back into their backstory a little bit and ask them to, hey, tell me a time when this kind of issue was uncomfortable for you, and allow them to, in their own story, try to unearth what might be the block.
That's good.
We've had coaches, I do coaching. We've got like I don't have as many coaches as Jimmy does in his team, but we got about 10, and we've had coaches along the way who we've found out that the church was dying, and the pastor never told his coach any of the things that were happening at the church. He was just spending his hour and a half or 2 hours just chit chatting, giving stuff out there, and the coach is working on something, and then, again, the human heart lies to itself and it lies to others. And so there's nothing you can do with somebody like that. I don't know that you can really tease that out of somebody. Yeah.
You have a paradigm that I'm familiar with called cross coaching. I'd love for you just to kind of take us behind the curtain of walk us through your paradigm of coaching. And maybe as you're doing that, even talk about how did you land on that paradigm? Because in cross coaching, this whole thing called RPMs, where you focus on a leader's, see if I remember these off memory, relational, personal, missional, and spiritual goals.
Right.
You owe Eddie a gift card right there, buddy.
Yes, come on.
I owe Eddie many dinners, I'm sure. He works for a big outfit, so he always buys if I'm ever with him. So, so cross coaching is just a conversation outline that I created. I made it up. I wanted it to, obviously the acrostic to fit with the idea that this is centered on the cross of Jesus. And so so the C stands for connecting with somebody. And that's what I was just saying about learning somebody's story, understanding their life. And oftentimes, if you're coaching somebody and you jump right into the problem you're trying to solve or the issue, and you bypass this connecting stage, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, you're not going to have the kind of influence and impact in somebody's life that you can by really understanding and knowing their backstory, understanding where they are, understanding not just their backstory, but how did Jesus redeem them? How did he, how has Jesus come alongside to rescue them? And and what place do they sense in the story that God's using them in the renewal of all things? So connecting is understanding those things. And so we spend a lot of time connecting relationally, your marriage, your kids, other relationships, where you are with the leadership in your church, all those kinds of things. Personally, how are you doing personally? How are you stretching your mind? Are you getting enough exercise? Are you sleeping well? Are you doing drugs? What's your diet like? When's the last time you saw a doctor? Those are just, personal kinds of issues. And then, as you said, missionally, we want to connect, in terms of their job, their role, whatever they're doing. And then spiritually, how they connected to God. So that's in the connecting thing. The R stands for reviewing. So every conversation, we want to keep moving forward. So we review in our coaching time. Okay, so last session, you were going to be working on X, Y, Z. How did that go? Have you fulfilled it? How did the strategies that you put together work out? What are their blocks? What are those kinds? So we're reviewing that. Then the O stands for an objective. So every conversation is going to have some key ministry objective or life objective that's in the conversation, and it's very specific. This is what I think God wants me to be working on. This is the area. If it's a church plant, my objective might be to make contact with 50 new people in the next 30 days, something like that. And then the S stands for the strategies that are associated with that. And then the last S stands for prayer, supplication. Prayer is always interwoven within our conversation. and it's all connecting people back to in that conversation of, how is Jesus very active and present in the midst of this. There are places in your life where you need to, what we call turn away from your former way of living into the new life that God's called you into. So.
Good. And friends, listen, we're actually going to demystify this process a little bit here. Week in and week out, we actually try to do either a practical exercise here live, or give you some practical takeaways that you can do with your team or with your spouse, or even personally and privately. So we're actually going to do that in just a little bit. But let me just remind you, if you're watching this on Facebook Live, if you're here with us on Zoom, and if you have a question or something that you would just like to ask either Dr. Wood or Dr. Dodd here with us, please shoot that question into the chat, and our team will make sure that we can address that here live. But before we get into some of the practical stuff, Jimmy and Tom, I would love to ask, can you think of just a quick story or example of someone that you were personally coaching, or maybe a coach on your team that led through a breakthrough? Or is there just a coaching win story that you would want to share with the audience, of this guy comes to mind or this girl comes to mind?
Yeah, it's interesting because we deal with lots of pastors that say, I don't think I need to have a coach. I think that, everything is fine. And so you just start to ask questions, and you just start to walk through some things, and they might share some things, and you say, okay, you know what? It sounds like in that part of your life, or that part of your church, or that part of whatever, it sounds like you're just actually stuck. It sounds like you're stuck. And then I say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I think in that one piece, I think I'm stuck. And so to just coach them helps pastors to get unstuck. And so it's okay. Can you think of the way that you would like your church or your life or your marriage to be? You know what? Yes. I would like for our church to be like A, B, C, D, F, G. Okay. Can you share with me a bit more about the way that that actually things are now? Things now are like this. And so, okay. So there's a gap between the way things are now and the way that you would like for things to be. There is this gap. Coaching fills that gap. That's what coaching does.
Yeah.
It helps you to move in that leadership challenge from this point until this point. And it's just, I've just watched pastors just say, oh, okay. Now I get it, because you're just going to help me kind of go from point, from that point to that point. That's just, that's just very basic. Let me also say that we do lots and lots of crisis coaching, where it's just a bad situation, but there just has to be crisis coaching. And in crisis coaching, we ask about their health, but we make them take a physical. They have to have a physical. And there have been times in which there has been big pushback on crisis coaching. Twice in 21 years, that has saved somebody's life. They found a major illness. They found a major thing, and it saved their physical life. So oftentimes it's, I haven't had that in years. I haven't seen actually a doctor in years and years. And it's okay. Listen, you know what? Actually, if I want to coach you, you have to have a physical. And that there've been times in which there's been big pushback. So that's just in crisis situations. Because oftentimes we have found that pastors are stuck because they're actually depressed, and that there might be some things actually physically that they're just really struggling with. But there are some that there's those real amazing stories of these men that say, a pastor sort of saved my life. Not just spiritual. They saved my life, and that's always very satisfying. So.
And I hope you turn those two people at least into donors, because if they saved your life, you kind of owe Pastor Serve a little bit.
I will make some calls today.
That's good. Tom, what would you add to that?
Wow, Jimmy, that's so good. And those of you who are listening, I'll tell you, that means Pastor Serve is a major blessing to the Church of Jesus Christ in North America. And that's just incredible. And thanks. We don't do crisis coaching. So I'm glad that there's somebody in the space that's also doing that as well. taking care of that, not just the strategic things that we're trying to do. I know you guys do a lot of healing of broken pastors and pastorates, and churches are broken.
Yep.
So what a blessing to the body.
Thank you.
We're very thankful for that. Yeah. So one story quickly just came to mind. Was a pastor that a high capacity guy was doing an incredible job. Hired me, selected me. We don't assign coaches. People in our organization, they interview two different coaches and get to choose the one they want. He hired me, and so we were working down some things. And one of the items that came up in the course of his thing, one of the things he had to do was raising funds for a project that he had, and he had raised money in the past, but this became an issue. But because of the relationship we had, I was able to get down to the motivational level of his own heart, find out, that a lot of this was very fear-driven, a lot of hustle, a lot of guilt on people. And he was able to just come to a change in his own being to stop that and to repent of his own self-effort, reliance on his ability, the techniques that he'd learned, to put on love for the Lord, who was asking him to do this, and for the people that he was going to go ask, to love them well, and to join this project financially. And then we were able to set up plans strategically and tactically, and he found great freedom. And he told me later, it was an amazing story that he told me, and then I was able to pass on to our board, because they're an important part of what we're doing as well. That was that session was one of the most profound moments in his entire pastoral life.
Wow.
All of a sudden he found freedom. He'd been driven so harshly in his own life about driving people and trying to accomplish his ends. And that gave him the freedom of the gospel in his own life.
So good. Well, friends, before we jump into the practical exercise, I just got a text from a pastor here in South Florida that's actually watching on Facebook. And he said, I would be interested in getting a coach. However, I am fearful that my board would think that there is something deficient in my leadership. And before we actually answer that, I want to address that, because I think that's something that that is actually one of those barriers that stops a lot of pastors. I'll speak for my pastoral generation. I see a lot more willingness to enter into some more vulnerability, to say, yeah, actually, I need help here, here, and here. Not that we have it all together, but a lot of times boards, elders, deacons, whatever your church structure may be, would say, we're not paying for you to get a coach. We're not paying for you. We hired you because you don't need a coach. Have you guys seen that? And how would you address that? What would you say to a board member, to an elder, if their pastor comes to them and says, I'd actually like to hire a coach?
Get your board the book, Pastors Are People Too. Because that book says, here's why your pastor needs a coach. And so I would buy that book for your whole board. And because that book just spells out in very, very clear language, hey, this is why. And, that they can use Tom and they can use Pastoserve. And there's lots and lots of other really good groups. Oh, they're way below, Pastoserve and Tom. But anyway, yeah. Because I think that book really, really spells it out in very clear language.
It's good.
I would say that it's honestly, maybe there are. I haven't found that to be true among lay leadership. Actually, most of the lay leadership, when their pastor says, hey, I was thinking about getting a coach, they go, hallelujah. Okay.
That's great.
That's really good.
Man, we've been wondering how we could help you.
Yeah.
That's been my primary experience. So, yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing both of you, you would give a resounding, if you're a board member or an elder listening to this, or if you're an authority figure at your church and your pastor comes to you and says, I want to get a coach, you're giving a resounding thumbs up. And then I also am hearing both of you say, if you're in a seat of governance or authority, you should encourage your pastor to get a coach. And do that in a way that, listen, there's nothing wrong or deficient with you, but we want you to have all the tools in your tool bag to thrive in ministry, to be resilient in ministry. And we so believe that coaching is one of those tools. And friends, Jimmy's organization, Tom Wood's organization, Church Multiplication Ministries, and Pastor Serve are all going to be on our website at resilientchurchleadership.com, along with the books and resources that have been mentioned on today's webinar. If you're wondering, where do I even get started? Like, where do I find a coach? These resources will be on our website as well. In fact, through Resilient Church Leadership, we are actually offering 2 free, no questions asked coaching sessions for you. If you just want to dip your toe in the water, these are not truncated 10-minute conversations. These are 2 actual coaching conversations that are offered to you if you want to try this out. But with that said, all right, Tom, you and I have known each other for a long time. Let's just give people, we've got about 15 minutes left. Let's just take like 10 minutes and like walk us through, if you were coaching me, like, let's just give an example of like, what would this look like?
Okay. Eddie, good to see you. How was your holidays?
It was great. I didn't have my in-laws in town.
Oh.
And if they're watching, I still love you. But it was really quiet. It was just me, my wife, my kids, and we had my family in town who just recently moved down to Florida. But it was much, much smaller and quieter than we thought.
Tell me your wife's name again.
Sarah.
And you have, I heard you say earlier, I knew you had 4 kids and another one on the way. You and Sarah are going for a dozen, right? Isn't that the goal?
Nope. Our 5th kid was our COVID surprise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I should watch more TV. And I now have Hulu and Netflix.
Great. And you got plans for Christmas? You going to be traveling, or are you going to?
Won't be traveling. We will be here. We'll be home for Christmas, and really looking forward to being home for Christmas. We usually travel and head up north to where Sarah's family is. But because she's pregnant this year, we're just going to be here.
It's going to stay. Good.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
And you bought her Christmas present already, I assume?
I made her Christmas present this year. I built a built-in bookshelf and media center because that's my stress reliever. I'm kind of handy, and she's been wanting that for our house, and I finally built it.
That's great. And how's your Church United stuff going?
It is going really well. We've God's been very kind to this ministry this year. We've seen a lot of the things that we were trusting God for, obviously because it was COVID, get placed on hold, but then also in other ways profoundly surprise us and what 2020 did in the life of this Gospel City movement. We had our largest event of the year yesterday. We had our night of worship and celebration, and that's kind of our culminating event as a city movement where we trace God's faithfulness. And by all measures, it was a great success. But that also means I can kind of breathe a little bit now that kind of big event's done.
Was it online or in person?
It was in person and also live stream. So we held it at a large church here, so we were able to socially distance as much as possible. But the majority of our attendance was actually online this year, and we planned for that.
Good. And throughout your ministry career, you've really found a good niche for yourself, right?
Yeah, I feel like I'm right where God has me. I love serving the broader church. I believe that the church is the hope of the world, obviously, as you know. But really, it felt like this role in connecting the church with one another, believing that unity is one of the greatest apologetics that we could offer the church, is not only the future of the church, in my humble opinion, but is also a necessity in a post-church, post-Christian culture. So yeah, I'd say I'm having a good time.
That's great. Why don't we hit pause and you just thank the Lord, in prayer, just for the night of celebration and then also for God providing this great opportunity for you, would you?
Sure. Yeah. Our Father and our God, we come before you to just say thank you for this time, these voices, these men and women that are in my life that have been a profound blessing to me. But Lord, we specifically thank you for last night and how you demonstrated your love and your care for not just me personally, but this movement called Church United and the National Christian Foundation. How the stories that were shared were really beyond anything that we could have ever thought of on our own power or orchestrated, but were true demonstrations of what is possible when God's people come together to put down ego and logo for something larger and shared. So Father, we just pause and give you thanks. And we ask that you would even just continue to bless and take this movement. And we present it to you with open hands. Lord, have your way, we pray. Amen.
Thanks. So, in our coaching model that this is the review time. There's nothing to review because you and I haven't been coaching. So if there was something that you wanted to be coached in right now, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's something personal, something missional related to your job or related to how God's using you in the renewal of all things, or some aspect of your spiritual life with God, what would be the thing? What's the presenting issue you say, this would really help me?
Sure. I mean, just to be transparent, I feel stuck in one way in that I'm actually losing my right-hand guy here that works with me. He's been a gift and a blessing to me and to this movement. Really complements my gift well. He's the guy that keeps us in line and out of jail, but he is moving back to be with his family. And as I'm thinking through a replacement of that, it's forced me to think through a little bit of a reorg and restructure of the role. Church United's growing, so I need to find someone that would help us kind of keep pace with that. But I'm not a detail guy, so I'm struggling to write a job description and to get what's in my head that I feel like I can articulate down to paper and communicate in a way that you can present to somebody. And I just honestly I feel stuck thinking through it.
Okay. So what would you say is the main thing out of all you just said? So you mentioned a number of things you wanted to do, but what would be the primary objective? Like if you say over the next 3 months, this is the thing I've got to do.
I need to write a job description for the renewed position, so the newly envisioned position that I'm creating. I need to find a candidate, interview candidates, and hire a candidate.
Okay, those are all steps towards something else. Like, what is the thing that you think about? So I got to write a job description, and I've got to start looking for somebody, and those are steps towards something else. What's the something else?
I'm struggling to answer that.
It's not as
hiring this person.
I need to find the right person for this job, right?
Yes.
I have an admin person that
yes.
fits with the growing organization.
Yes.
Okay. So that would be the thing that over the next 3 months or whatever you want to work on, to hire a new admin that fits our growing organization.
Yes.
Would that be clear?
That's clear. That's exactly what I need.
All right. So say it back to me about what you think you see as the thing you want to work on, the thing that's the major objective.
Finding and hiring the right person to replace someone that I'm losing that fits my growing need in our growing organization.
Okay. It's not really locating, it's finding. It's the main thing is hiring that person, right? Or getting this person in place. Yeah.
Yes.
Hiring
Yeah. Onboarding them and hiring them. Yeah.
For our growing organization. Okay. Now, with that in mind, that's what we're after. What would be some things, you've already listed some of them, what would be some of the things that you think you could do or need to do to start that process? You've already listed some of them.
The first thing that I need to do is just discipline myself to sit in my office and begin to even write out a job description.
Okay, so discipline self to write a job description. Okay. All right. And so let's just take that as one strategy, because we don't have time to go into, there's a whole strategy you have. Let's just take that one as one of your strategies. Okay. So what is specifically you want to have? A job description?
Yes. I want to have a job description that fits the renewed, re-envisioned role that I have in mind.
Okay. How will you know when you've got that job description?
I have no idea other than I have something to present.
Okay. So it's in writing.
Yes, it's in writing. Yeah.
Okay. And how, so, just to give the audience to know what I'm doing with this and the strategy thing is.
Yeah, please.
I'm using what I'm using is SMARTER as my outline in my head. So it's specific. What the strategy is specific. I have to have a written job description. How will I know? How can I measure that I've accomplished that thing? Well, it's written down on paper, and then aspiring is, so where in this does Jesus, for you, because you just said you're not a disciplined person, where's Jesus going to have to show up for you to make this happen?
He's going to first have me admit that this is a weakness of mine and feel comfortable admitting that this is a weakness of mine. He's going to have to remind me that this is exactly why I need to hire this person. And then I'm going to have to trust that I know that I'm not good at this. And what I present is probably not going to be a final product. I need to probably show it to some people in my life that do this better than I do for feedback. I have a great board, great team. So this is not really just on my shoulders to do alone. Maybe I could ask for some help.
Okay. And specifically, if I ask, how will prayer become part of your process of this main objective and then this strategy of hiring this person? In other words, how is prayer going to be part of your strategy or part of your hiring of this person?
I really appreciate you asking me that. And by the way, audience, none of this was scripted. So this is real. This is live. I'm just going to admit that I have not thought through how prayer was going to be a part of it until you asked me that question. I think I need to begin to pray a little bit more, or start praying. Let's not even say a little bit more. I need to start praying about the Lord leading me to the right person. The Lord already has that person in mind, obviously. I know who it's going to be, but that the Lord would begin to prepare their heart, my heart, for that. And then I'd begin to trust him that it's not just Eddie going to go find the person, that the Lord is going to provide this person. So I need to commit to making this part of our weekly prayer strategy as a team.
Yeah, that's right. So that was another question, was organizationally, how is prayer going to be part of it as an organization? Because this is a key person in your organization. So
Yeah.
how could you involve in other people in the organization to be praying for God to bring us the right person to fill this role? Yeah, it's a great part of making it a reliance on God to be able to do this, and a faith in Jesus to be able to give us the right person. So if we had more time, and we don't, because we only had a couple of minutes, and I know you want to debrief on this, but I would finish that with, is it realistic for you to be able to write this on your own? Do you need any help with it? Where would you go for help? Have you ever looked at somebody else's job descriptions? Is there some other organization that has hired this role that you could go look at and see what their job descriptions look like? Who could you go talk to? Do you need to look into hiring an organization to hire this person for you, like a headhunter, if it's this important, this critical of a role for you? Those would be down the road.
Great questions.
Smarter. And then how are you going to celebrate once you get the right person? How are you going to reward yourself when this person is hired, when you do get that? And that needs to be part of your thinking of, how do we celebrate?
It depends if they're Baptist or Presbyterian. Will depend on how I answer the celebration question. Bourbon or grape juice, and I'll say both.
Okay, and then let's pray. So at this point, I would say, and we've only got a minute. So at this point, and we don't rush this. This is the bad thing, is we don't really rush prayer, but we've prayed already in this conversation. But is that we would close and commit ourselves to the Lord. You would commit yourself to the Lord on this particular issue, and to bring it to fruition in your life. So that would be cross coaching. It would take an hour and a half to 2 hours to go through that conversation.
Yeah. So it typically looks like what? So that this conversation, which by the way, I hope you just got a small taste of if you're watching, profoundly helpful even in 10 minutes. But a typical coaching conversation for both of your organizations, I believe, is once a month, 2 hours, or twice a month, 2 hours. Give us an idea.
Yeah, for us, it's a 12-month contract. We do it for pay. We have found that paying customers perform better than non-paying customers. It's just a reality of American life. So they pay for a full year. You get the first 3 months, you get every 2 weeks, and then the remainder of the contract, it comes out to about once every 3 weeks. Set up an appointment. And
that's very, very close with us as well. I mean, it's a 1-year contract. It's paying because you put a lot more into it. But we do coach a lot of pastors that just cannot pay the full weight, and so we ask them to pay a part, and we go out and we find those that can help. So we coach lots of poor pastors. We coach those that just can't afford it.
Yeah. Brothers, I just want to say on behalf of Resilient Church leadership, thank you for creating this time. Thank you for devoting so much of your life and your work to coaching, to pulling out not just health and wholeness in other leaders, but making the gospel shine and come to bear in their lives. Tom, I'll just say, like, I'm a guy that is usually all in on all kinds of stuff, but I've been resistant to coaching, not because I don't think I need it, but because I don't want to upset the apple cart, because like I've already got my life kind of framed out, and like I got this, I can't add one more thing. But even in that just 10 minutes that we just did, shoot, I'm certified to coach in your organization, and I'm forgetting how valuable that time is. And even just like, how's prayer going to impact that was something that I'll just be honest and say, like, I didn't even think about, because I was like, I just get into that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Profoundly helpful. So thank you. And hopefully if you've watched this, you've just gotten a glimpse into what coaching can look like for you. So I'm going to encourage you, if you've been listening, you're like, listen, I've been thinking about getting a coach. Maybe this is the first time you've heard about getting a coach. At resilientchurchleadership.com, we're going to feature these two organizations here as examples of where you can go to learn more about coaching and learn more about their methodology. Once again, resilientchurchleadership.com. Thank you for being a part of this conversation here at the Backstage, where we just take a few moments every week to reorient our hearts, our minds, our lives back to these vital roles and vital conversations about character and soul care, because we believe that healthy leaders lead healthy churches, and healthy churches actually change the fabric of their cities. So we want to invest in your health and wholeness. So pastor, ministry leader, thank you for being a part. Be sure to like this on Facebook, share it as we continue to put this message forward. We will catch you at 2:00 Eastern Standard Time next Thursday as we continue the conversation here on the Backstage. Take care.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, Tom.
See you guys.
Go ahead.